Hello chess fans! Today we're going to look at another game from a recent tournament I played. So this game was against an opponent who I had never played before over the board, but I actually had played them in a blindfold game and we drew that game and I was worse for most of the game. So I was hoping to get a better position from the opening this time than I had in that game. So I started off with e4, my opponent went for e6, and yeah, I didn't really know what to expect, so I kind of didn't prepare anything. And after d4, d5, as you know, after e6, as I recommended on the channel, I usually play queen e2, but after losing an over-the-board game with that move, I sort of have been scarred from that move, so at least I will try to prepare it a lot more before I sort of come back to it. So I went for d4, d5, and here I'm really not too familiar with a lot of French positions, and something that I actually have to study. So here, usually I would go for Throsh, and this is a very feasible option. The idea of Throsh is, okay, there's no win-over anymore because there's c3. And also, after knight f6, your structure is more solid. For example, after knight d2, knight f6, this is another point, is that you get the c3 move, so you're a little bit more solid versus this knight f6 move as well. Rather than if you would play knight c3, which then after knight f6, e5, something like this. Now your pawn really kind of wants to be on c3 to defend d4. Okay, but instead of that, I decided to go for the advanced variation, and it was sort of just like, I've really never played the advanced variation before. It was some sort of over-the-board, just creativity. I was just like, okay, we're going to get a game. I don't really care, and I didn't really know the advanced too well, but I had some ideas in mind. My opponent plays c5, here you have to go c3. I went knight c6, knight f3, we're just sort of defending this d4 point, and my opponent goes for this move, queen b6, sort of attacking this d4 point again. And there's lots of different moves you can play here. The main move is to go a3, and the idea is to go b4 to get rid of this pawn so that you can stop the tension on the center. For example, the main line might go like this, and then here there's many moves, but c4 is sort of the most popular. The idea is to stop b4 because then we have en passant. And here white should really look to eventually get b3 off under favorable circumstances, and then he should just have a nice center and some sort of attack. That's the main line, but I decided to go for this bishop d3 move because I was just sort of feeling adventurous, and this is the way I usually play anyways. When I play solid, play for a small advantage, I usually ended up messing it up, so I just decided to go for a gambit and play a type of position that I like playing, which is where I'm down a pawn, but I have lots of compensation, and something I don't really mind doing. And after c takes d4, there's a few gambits here. One of them is this one. Here, you can't take the pawn because after takes, queen takes, there's this bishop b5 move. Obviously, so here bishop d7, and then here this move castles and now takes because there's no bishop b5 check anymore. There's this move knight b2. So this is one of the gambits that I could have played, and another one is this move castles here, which has really been making the rounds at the top level. And here, for example, if they take, we just get all our pieces out, and we're looking for knight a4, bishop e3, and yes, very nice position for me. Look, I have 3 pieces developed, and I'm castled. They have 1 piece out, and white should have full compensation. But instead they shocked me with knight h6, which I'd never seen before, and already I make a mild inaccuracy. So here the best move, I think, by far is to go for this move d takes c5, which is really unnatural because you sort of let the bishop get out for free. But here after castles, we have a few ideas. Now, firstly, we want to play this move b4. For example, if they castle here after b4, they're just in a lot of trouble. For example, bishop b7, here we can even take here. Their structure is terrible, we have more space, this bishop is amazing. Here, white should be completely winning. So they can't allow b4. So what if they go a5? Then I just still take here, and after it takes here, I go like knight d2, and their position is collapsing. There's nowhere safe on the board. So they can't go a5. So they have to do something immediately about this knight then. So let's say they go knight g4. Here we can go queen e2, defending the pawn. And now again, we're threatening h3, knight h6, and then to take here. So they have to do something again. They have to go queen c7. And here we can go for this move bishop f4, again defending the pawn. Again, we're threatening h3 and knight h6 and to take this. So they have to do something again. After f6, this position gets extremely wild. And this is definitely the best thing I could have done, but the position is anything but clear. It's completely unclear, and white should be better here though. But I didn't spend too long. I just castled pretty quickly because it can't be a bad move. And here, if they go knight f5, I just sort of get an improved version of that after takes, bishop takes. They just didn't get knight g4 off. So here, I mean, immediately, I can probably... Oh, I can't win a pawn. It's a little bit poisoned, but maybe something like here, blockade on this square. And I should be doing well. So here, instead, they took, not allowing this option of d takes c5. I took here, and they went for knight f5, which is a good move. Here, I have to part with my light squared bishop, unfortunately. But after here, knight c3, bishop e6, we can just take stock of the position. We've sort of... gone from the opening here, and now it's a strategic battle about the pawn structure of the position. So here, it's clear that white's better. This bishop is horrible. It's classic French bishop, and my pawn structure is better. And I have some weaknesses to target. This pawn might be weak. This pawn might be weak. This b7 pawn is possibly weak. And my pieces have some nice dark squares here. Notice that this dark squared complex here is quite weak. And all of these I'm going to try to use. So here immediately I play actually the engine's favorite move, which is not the most popular move here. The most popular move is a3 here, which I think is kind of a positional concession because we don't want to commit these pawns yet. And you'll see why in a second. But here I went for knight a4. And this is a very nice move. The idea is I want to kick the queen off this b6 square so I can sort of develop the bishop more easy. But also I want to look at this c5 square. And immediately I think my opponent goes slightly wrong here. Here, the only move that I thought the best move was this move queen b5. And this is what's been played in the database by some 2400 players. And the idea is I'm attacking the knight, which is defended for now, but I'm also keeping pressure on here. So it's not really that easy to develop. I'm also eyeing the c4 square so that I have more coverage of it, and I'm also keeping an eye on the c5 square so I have more coverage of that. So here, for example, if I go for a move like bishop e3, he can go bishop e7, and it's really unclear how I make progress. And we're going to see why. For example, the queen just looks better here. After queen c7, which is what he played in the game, I played this move bishop e3, and now we notice that I'm not only is the queen kind of misplaced on c7, I also get this rook c1 with tempo, and then I'm threatening like b4, b5 ideas, and this pin on this knight is very annoying. Here my opponent decided to go for h6, which was a very nice move. So this move in the game, I didn't think it was really all that necessary, but it turns out to be the best move. And here, if I continue with a move like rook c1 sort of nonchalantly, he can go for g5, threatening f4, and then the bishop has to move. He gets bishop g4 at that point, and my center is just really crumbling. So I have to be very careful here not to allow g5, so I go knight e1. The idea is to meet g5 with this move f4, and then here I would be completely winning. For pretty obvious reasons. He has these doubled pawns. Now this bishop's never getting out, and I just have this positional bind over the position, and he's underdeveloped. So instead here he went a bishop e7. And another important thing here, a very, very big mistake would be this move f4. This is a huge mistake, and this is something that you need to be sort of understanding of in your own game. White has a big advantage here because of the fact that he has this ability to come in with these pieces onto these squares, onto all these squares around the king side and all these squares around the queen side. All these squares are sort of open for white to take and to look at. So when we put pawns on those squares, we can no longer use our pieces on those squares, and our pieces become less flexible. So it's very important not to play a move like f4 unless he plays g5. That is the only reason that we would play f4. So here I went knight d3. Here I'm looking for the c5 square. So obviously he stopped it with b6. I went rook c1, developing, eyeing the queen. Here there's some threats of if he castles, maybe I can go knight c3, knight b5, and then queen here. And there's some sort of threats. So he went queen d7 right away, just getting out of there, which is a good move. Now here my knight's done its purpose on a4. It's threatened to go to c5, provoke this move b6, which created this knight weakness. So now I can go back knight c3 and target this pawn. Here he castled, and here's where the first point in the game where it can be said that I made a small mistake. I spent like 20 minutes on this move, and I ended up playing a sort of bad move. But it's really hard to say what the best sort of move is, and it's something that I think is a difficult thing to do as a chess player, especially when you have a lot of options. So here maybe the best move is to go queen h5, and we'll see why in a second. But after castles, after rook e1, here I was very much expecting my opponent to play this move rook a c8. Looks most natural to me. The other rook goes to d8, and the position is sort of harmonious, and I really didn't know what to do. I was just sort of getting another piece into the game, and I was thinking about what to do here. But after rook fc8, it sort of kind of played into my idea. Now I went for this move queen h5. And the idea of queen h5 is now I'm putting pressure on all these points in this position. Now his king side is actually looking quite tender after he pushed this h6 move, which is in hindsight why after the game I thought h6 was a bad move, but it turns out to be fine the way he played it even. So yeah, now the queen kind of looks here, and here after the game my opponent thought this move f4 was winning, but here I have knight takes f4, and after bishop g4 looks to be trapping my queen because where does the queen go? It can't go anywhere. Here I have this knight move e6, attacking the queen, and for a second right after I played queen h5 I was extremely worried about about f4 because after e6 I saw this move queen takes e6 for a second. And then I was just shocked. I was just like, wait, does he have queen takes e6? Now, thankfully here I have knight takes e6, and after takes here I have knight f4, winning this pawn. So I would still be winning, and it took me a few minutes to see that after I played this queen h5 move. I thought I blundered for a second, because for example, if you move, your queen has nowhere to move. So like if I go like queen e5, like he's just gonna win a piece, something like this. Okay, knight d3 even actually immediately. So yeah, he just would win a piece, and if I take his queen. After takes here, I thought for a second that after here he can just go back here and then he has the bishop pair, but okay, thankfully here I'm winning a pawn. So after I saw that, my opponent spent around like 15-ish minutes here, or maybe 10-ish minutes, and played this move bishop f8, which can be considered another sort of bad move. Here, it was probably very important to try to get some sort of counterplay somehow, either with rook b8, a5, or just something, looking to get counterplay on the queen side, because otherwise you're going to get rolled on both sides of the board. But after bishop f8, this is a very bad move. Here I play this move queen f3. And now, this game, I think this was my best game of the tournament. I think this game was better than that game against the 2200. And that's because I sort of really just understood the positional ideas very well, I think. I think I played this game nearly perfect. There's only one spot where I sort of made a bad move. And the idea was, if I go queen f3 right away, there's this move g5. And he's threatening this move f4. Now, if I go queen g3, he can go king h7. Now, he's threatening f4, so I have to go f4 myself. And after g4, here, if I play this move h3, he gets rook g8. Which is really important because now the rook can eye here, and I don't really want to take here because of the fact he can take with the rook, and then he can double up, and it's really bad for me. But after queen h5, bishop f8, now queen f3, now we have to see the clear difference. If he goes for g5 here, the same line, after f4, g4, h3, there's no rook g8. So this bishop actually is just worsely placed on f8 rather than it is on e7. So here we can see, yeah, queen f3 is a pretty nice move. And maybe he should go for that anyways. But instead he went rook d8. Here he kind of realized his mistake. He was just like, oh, maybe the rook belongs on d8 actually now. And this is the sort of mistake that you'll see by players at this sort of range, is that it's sort of difficult for them to find plans, and you just got to play solid moves and you will get an advantage. They will make mistakes. Don't worry about your opponent getting in some sort of equal position and just completely getting playing well. That's not going to happen, especially at even my level. Like many people, even if we get a completely equal position, they're going to outplay me, and I'm going to make mistakes. That's going to happen regardless. So here I went for this move knight f4. I'm targeting this pawn. He went rook c8, and here I made kind of a mistake. Here maybe I should go queen g3, and we'll see why in a second. The idea is that if he goes king h7, now I'm sort of a little bit more flexible. I said I went knight h5, and now after king h7, I'm a little bit less flexible. And the idea of king h7 is just to defend here. And yeah, it's because the king is sort of better placed on h7, but instead of that he went king h8, which means that we kind of just transpose after queen g3. And if you're wondering why does queen h3 not really encourage this, it's because I can go like h4, h5 now, and I don't really have to commit the knight to h5. So after knight h5, king h8, I went for queen g3, he went queen e7. Again, this is another quite bad move. Maybe here he should finally realize that the king is in grave danger and go like knight e7, knight g6 to go for f4, and here it's really unpleasant, but okay, it's the best you can ask for. But instead queen e7 allows us to move knight b5, and now I'm looking for this d6 square, and it's getting very, very, very unpleasant. Here he went knight a5, which I wasn't expecting whatsoever. I briefly calculated, but here my main move was, by far the main move I was calculating was knight b4, and I really just didn't see what to do. Now my plan was just to go knight c3, and for example if he goes knight c6, I was just going to find a different move, because I didn't really see what to do. Now the engine says here after a3, for example, knight d3 is met by bishop h6, so knight c2 attacking my rook, I defend it, and here I thought after takes, f takes, he can just sort of exchange everything, go like queen d7, rook c8 to keep this pawn defended, and I thought he was fine. So yeah, this was sort of probably one of the best options, but he went knight a5, which according to the engine is one of the engine's favorite moves, which I didn't really understand, because after b3, which is what I went for in the game, I'm just stopping knight c4, and now this knight just looks dumb. Sort of what happened to me, but b3 doesn't create any weaknesses. There's no bishop a3 because he put his queen here to block it, and also the bishop is tied down to defending mate. So here he played rook c1, I went rook c1, and here he went rook c8, which allowed me to go for this move h3, which, sorry, I meant to say that in the next position. But after h3, the idea is, okay, if I take right away, there's some sort of back rank problems with like queen b4, threatening queen e1 mate. So I just stopped that all with h3. And after a6, now we see I can just take. And here I have a winning move. And see if you can calculate the winning line for white. This was the only spot in the game where you can say my move was actually a mistake. I'm still winning after my move, but yeah, it's definitely not a move that was very good. And yeah, take a few seconds to see if you can find the best move for white here. Now I think it should be obvious. My plan was to go knight d6. Why don't I go for knight d6? Now after bishop e6, find the winning move for white, which is why I didn't play knight d6. I didn't see the move here. And there's really only one move that wins. All other moves are around +1. But yeah, see if you can find the best move here. The move is knight e8. Brilliant move. The idea is after queen e8, you have bishop takes h6. You're threatening here. And if he takes, you have knight f6. Attacking this and mate here. And I don't really think there's any other lines he can play. For example, he can go knight. He can go here. But then after takes, we would just win this pawn. So this would just be completely winning. But I didn't see that. And so here instead he would have to go bishop d7, stopping that. And after queen f3, you're threatening both these pawns. You're winning one of them. And it's very simple. Instead, I went for this move, knight c3. Because after here, bishop e6, I didn't really see a move here. For example, if I go for a move like knight f4 immediately, again, he has g5 and he's equalizing. So here I got really scared of this. So I went knight c3, attacking this pawn, and there's no way to defend the pawn. And here what I was expecting is bishop e6. I thought knight f4, queen d7, queen f3. Knight c6, I win this pawn. But he gets the bishop pair, and he also gets this nice d5 square for his pieces because of the fact that I can't really push a pawn there easily without losing e5. So here, a sample line would continue b5, knight here, takes here, queen here, attacking the bishop on f8, your king g8, takes here, and here I would be up a pawn, but okay, the position remains extremely complicated, and there's still a lot of fight left for both sides. Instead, after knight c3, he finally cracked. So when you put a lot of pressure on your opponent, and you sort of go for things, you make their position uncomfortable to play, they're bound to sort of crack under the pressure. Finally, he makes a complete blunder, which was this move queen a3, which just loses the game on the spot. Here I take here, my opponent played queen takes a2, and here they were counting on knight takes b6, queen takes here, and queen d1 with this fork. After attacking the king and the knight, after king h2, they had queen h5. But no need to do it. Look where their queen is, look where their knight is, look where their bishop is. And look where their king is. I have all these pieces eyeing the king. There's bound to be something that works here, and there is. Bishop takes h6. If they were to take with the pawn here, and there's no way to stop queen g8 mate, and the only way to stop it is here, which allows queen g7 mate. So they can't take, and yeah, what else do they do? Otherwise, I'm taking here and going knight f6 next, and it's mate. For example, like bishop here, just takes here and mate. So yeah, after bishop h6, my opponent resigned, and that ended one of the games that I think from the tournament that I was really happy to play. This game was just very, very nice. I got an advantage from the opening. I positionally outmaneuvered my opponent a little bit. I put pressure on their king side. I also kept them guessing on the queen side. And then they made a few mistakes, one being like moving the rook to c8 and then to d8. That just wasted some time, which you just really had no time for after I attacked you. And the other was this final blow, which was queen a3, which, okay, just lost the game on the spot, but already the position going down a pawn here, yeah, many players just, it's hard to just say, oh, okay, I'll just go down a pawn and try to defend the endgame. I think it's a skill many GMs have. They're willing to go transpose from their bad position into this position in the rook pawn endgame, down a pawn, and just get the draw rather than leave the position being complicated and being in like the worst side of the complication. So that's, I think, a skill that even I should probably develop. Like when you're in a worse position, just like sometimes it's okay to simplify and down into a draw on endgame where you're being pressed. Like that's sometimes okay. Or a pawn down endgame where you have activity. That's something I think that the higher rated players are very good at, and something that I think that can be learned as a lesson from this game from both me and my opponent, because I completely underestimated the idea of just giving up the d5 pawn, and clearly this knight d6 move would have been killer. So yeah, that's the end of today's video, guys. If you liked the video, please remember to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.